He raised his own daughter but did not know who she really was. When the truth broke everything he believed, he tried to leave, but she revealed she already knew the truth and still chose him anyway. David was a man who believed that love was not about blood, but about care, time, and sacrifice. He worked every day from early morning until late at night. Sometimes he worked 2 jobs just to make sure his little girl, Mia, had food to eat, clothes to wear, and school fees paid. Mia was a bright, quiet girl with big curious eyes. She called him Daddy every single day with a smile that made all his tiredness disappear. David raised Mia alone. Her mother left when Mia was still a baby. David never spoke badly about her. He simply told Mia, people leave for different reasons, but I will never leave you. Life was not easy. There were nights when David had only a small meal, but he still gave Mia the bigger portion. There were days when his shoes were broken, but Mia always had clean uniforms for school. He often skipped his own needs so she could have what she needed. As Mia grew older, people in the neighborhood sometimes whispered. Some said Mia did not look like David. Others said she had different features. David heard these things, but he ignored them. He only cared about the girl who ran into his arms every evening calling him Daddy. But deep inside, small questions began to form. Questions he pushed away quickly because he was afraid of what the answers might mean. One day, Mia came home from school looking confused. She sat quietly at the small wooden table in their home. David noticed her silence immediately. What is it, my child? He asked gently. Mia hesitated before answering. Daddy, today in school, someone said something strange. David stopped what he was doing and looked at her closely. What did they say? Mia lowered her eyes. They said I don't look like you, and maybe I am not really your daughter. The words hit David's heart like a sudden cold wind. He forced a smile so she would not feel afraid. People say many things, he said softly. But I raised you. That is what matters. Mia nodded, but her eyes still looked unsure. That night, after she slept, David sat alone in the dark room. For the first time, he did not feel tired from work. He felt tired from thoughts. He remembered how Mia came into his life suddenly, how her mother disappeared, and how no clear answers were ever given. He shook his head, trying to stop the thoughts. No, he whispered to himself. She is my daughter. That is enough. But deep down, something had already started to change. And soon, the truth would begin to find its way out. Weeks passed, but the words Mia had at school did not disappear. Instead, they grew stronger in quiet ways. She became more observant, watching David when he thought she was not looking. She noticed how strangers sometimes looked at them twice, as if trying to understand something hidden. David also began to change. Not in how he treated Mia, he still loved her deeply, but in how quiet he became. He started to ask himself questions he never allowed before. Why did Mia's mother leave so suddenly? Why was there never a birth certificate he could fully understand? Why did no one from her mother's side ever come looking for her? One evening, while David was fixing a broken chair, a man from the neighborhood stopped by. The man was an old acquaintance of Mia's mother. He had not spoken to David in years. David, the man said carefully, there is something you should know. People have been talking for a long time. David's hand stopped moving. Talking about what? The man looked uncomfortable. About Mia. About her real father. David stood up slowly. His heart started beating faster, but he tried to stay calm. She is my daughter, he said firmly. The man sighed. Maybe in your heart. But not by blood. Those words felt heavy in the air. David asked the man to leave immediately, but the damage was done. That night, David could not sleep. He kept looking at Mia as she rested peacefully, unaware of the storm forming around her identity. The next day, David visited a clinic quietly. He asked questions about DNA tests. He did not tell Mia anything. He told himself it was just to be sure. But deep inside, he already feared what the result might say. Days later, the results came. David stood alone in a small office, holding the paper in his shaking hands. His eyes scanned the words again and again, refusing to believe them. No biological match. The room felt like it was closing in on him. Everything he had built, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, was now questioned by a single line on a piece of paper. He walked home in silence, the paper folded tightly in his pocket. Mia was waiting for him at home, smiling as always. But for the first time, David could not return her smile. And in that moment, everything between them began to shift in a way neither of them yet understood. That night, David sat outside their small home for a long time. The air was quiet, but his mind was not. He kept thinking about the paper in his pocket. Every time he touched it, it felt heavier, like it was not just paper anymore but a decision that could break his whole life. Inside the house, Mia was asleep. Her school bag was still on the chair. Her shoes were neatly placed by the door. Everything looked normal. Nothing in the room looked like a secret had been discovered. But David no longer saw normal. He saw questions everywhere. Am I really just a caretaker? He whispered to himself. Or am I something more, something less? He remembered every sacrifice. The nights he went hungry. The times he borrowed money just so Mia could attend school trips. The day she fell sick and he carried her to the hospital on his back because there was no transport fare. His heart tightened. If I am not her father, then what am I to her, he thought. The next morning, David behaved differently. He still made breakfast, still prepared Mia for school, still tied her hair neatly like always. But his hands were slower. His smile did not reach his eyes. Mia noticed. Daddy, she said softly while eating, are you hungry? David quickly shook his head. No, my child. I am just tired from work. But Mia was not convinced. She was growing older, and she could feel emotions even when they were not spoken. At school that day, Mia could not focus. Her teacher's voice sounded far away. The words from the children about her identity returned again and again in her mind. Maybe I am not really his daughter, she thought quietly. After school, she made a decision. Instead of going straight home, she stopped by a small shop near the road. There she saw a woman who knew her mother long ago. The woman sometimes visited the area. Mia approached her nervously. Auntie, can I ask you something? The woman looked surprised but nodded. Yes, my dear. Mia lowered her voice. Do you know who my real father is? The woman froze for a moment. Her eyes shifted uncomfortably. That is a difficult question, she said slowly. Mia's hands tightened. People say I am not Daddy's real daughter. I just want to know the truth. The woman sighed deeply. Your mother, she never told everything clearly. There were many things happening at that time. But one thing I can say is this, David is the one who raised you. And that is not a small thing. Mia's eyes filled with confusion. But is he my real father or not? The woman hesitated, then said quietly, I cannot answer that. Mia walked home slowly after that. Her heart felt heavy. She was no longer just hearing rumors. Now she was standing in the middle of uncertainty. When she reached home, David was sitting silently inside. He looked up at her, and for a brief moment, their eyes met differently. It was not the usual warmth. It was something uncertain, something fragile. Where were you? David asked gently. Mia hesitated. I was just thinking. There was a long silence. David wanted to ask her if she had heard anything. Mia wanted to ask him if he knew the truth. But neither of them spoke. That night, both father and daughter sat in the same house, separated by a truth they were both slowly discovering, but not yet ready to say out loud. And somewhere deep inside David's heart, a painful thought began to grow. If I am not her father, can I still stay? But he did not yet know that Mia was already preparing a question that would change everything even more. The next morning came with the same sunlight, the same noise from the street, and the same small house, but nothing inside David and Mia felt the same anymore. David stood in the kitchen longer than usual, staring at a cup of tea he did not drink. His mind kept going back to the same question. The test result. The silence between him and Mia. The feeling that something had quietly broken. Mia walked in slowly, ready for school, but she did not speak as freely as before. She looked at David, studying his face carefully. "Daddy," she said softly. David turned quickly, forcing a small smile. "Yes, my child." There was a pause. Mia held her school bag tightly. "Do you still want me here?" The question hit David harder than anything else he had faced in his life. He opened his mouth, but no words came out immediately. His chest felt tight. His eyes dropped to the floor for a moment. "What kind of question is that?" he finally asked gently. Mia's voice shook a little. "People at school keep talking. I hear them. I also hear adults talking sometimes when they don't know I am listening." David's hand slowly clenched. He realized the truth could no longer stay hidden in silence. He pulled out the folded paper from his pocket, the DNA result. He placed it on the table without saying anything. Mia looked at it. Mia continued, "So if you are thinking of leaving now, just because of that paper, then I want you to know something." She paused. "I already decided a long time ago, you are my father." The words broke David completely. He turned away, covering his face with his hand. For the first time, the strong man who worked 2 jobs, who carried burdens without complaining, could not control his emotions. "I don't know what I deserve anymore," he whispered. Mia stepped closer and gently touched his arm. "You don't have to deserve it," she said. "You already earned it." And in that small house, something changed again, but this time, it was not just pain. It was understanding. But the hardest decision was still ahead for David. Because now he had to choose what kind of father he would be after knowing the truth. David did not sleep that night. He sat on the floor in the small living room while Mia slept in the next room. The house was quiet, but his thoughts were loud. He kept hearing her words again and again. "I already chose you." It was simple, but it carried more weight than anything the DNA paper had said. David looked at his hands. These hands had carried her as a baby. These hands had worked until they were rough and tired. These hands had fed her, protected her, comforted her. But now those same hands felt uncertain, like they belonged to someone who no longer knew what his place in the world was. "Am I still her father if I am not blood?" he whispered into the silence. For the first time, he did not answer himself quickly. The next morning, David made a decision. He would leave. Not because he stopped loving Mia, but because he felt confused, and he thought maybe she deserved a clearer life, one without questions or whispers from people. He believed he was doing the right thing. So he packed a small bag. Only a few clothes. Nothing more. Because everything else he had in life belonged to her memories. Mia woke up early and saw him packing. Her eyes widened. "Daddy, where are you going?" David stopped for a moment but did not look at her immediately. "I think it is better if I leave for a while," he said slowly. Mia stepped forward. "Because of the DNA test." David said nothing. That silence was enough. Mia shook her head quickly. "No. No, Daddy. Please don't do this." David finally looked at her. His eyes were tired. "I don't want to confuse your life," he said softly. "People will talk. You deserve peace." Mia's voice became stronger. "My peace is you." That sentence stopped him again. Mia walked closer, her voice shaking but firm. "You think I need someone else? You think I want a new father? I don't." David turned away, struggling with his emotions. "You are still young. You will understand later." "I understand now," Mia interrupted. Her voice cracked as tears filled her eyes. "I understand that the only person who never left me is you." David froze. Mia stepped closer, now crying openly. "I already knew I was not your biological child," she said. But I never cared. Because love was never something I had to prove. David's back slipped slightly from his hand. Mia continued, "You think living makes things better. It doesn't. It just takes away the only father I have ever known." David slowly sat on the edge of the bed, his strength breaking down. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said quietly. Mia shook her head. "No. The right thing is staying." There was a long silence. Then David asked something very softly. "Even after everything, you still want me to stay?" Mia nodded immediately. "Yes. Because I chose you long before I understood anything about DNA." David closed his eyes. For the first time, the paper in his pocket did not feel important anymore. It felt small. Meaningless compared to the child standing in front of him. Slowly, he opened his bag again and began removing his clothes. Mia watched quietly, her tears still falling, but her fear slowly fading. David looked at her and finally said, "I don't know what the world will say about us." Mia wiped her face and replied, "Then let them talk." David let out a small, tired breath, almost like a laugh, but full of emotion. And in that moment, he understood something deeply. Fatherhood was not something he received from biology. It was something he built every single day through love, sacrifice, and staying when it was hard. He stood up and pulled Mia into a hug. This time, he did not feel like a man who was unsure of his place. He felt like a father again. But life was not finished testing them yet. Because outside their door, the world was still watching, and the truth was still spreading. The days after that moment were not easy. Even though David stayed, the news about him and Mia slowly spread through the neighborhood. Some people whispered when he passed. Others looked at Mia with curious eyes at school. A few even made careless comments without thinking about how it felt. Mia tried to stay strong, but sometimes she came home quieter than usual. David noticed everything, even when she did not speak about it. One evening, she sat beside him while he fixed an old radio. She watched him for a long time before speaking. "Daddy," she said softly. "Yes, my child," David answered without looking up. Mia hesitated. "Do you regret staying?" David stopped what he was doing. The question was serious, and he knew it came from everything she had been hearing outside. He slowly turned to her. "No," he said firmly. Mia looked at him closely. "Not even a little." David shook his head. "Not even a little." Mia stayed quiet for a moment, then asked something even deeper. "Even if I am not your blood, I am still your daughter." David stood up and sat beside her. He looked at her carefully, as if choosing every word. "Listen to me," he said gently. "Blood is something people are born with. But being a father is something you choose every day. I chose you when I fed you, when I protected you, when I stayed awake while you were sick, when I worked so you could go to school." He paused. "And you chose me when you called me Daddy, even when you could have called me something else." Mia's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she smiled through them. "So, we chose each other?" she asked softly. David nodded. "Yes. That is what makes us family." Mia leaned her head on his shoulder, something she used to do when she was younger. For the first time in a long time, the house felt calm again. Months passed. The rumors slowly lost their power. People found new things to talk about. Life moved on, as it always does. But something had changed permanently in David and Mia's home. It was no longer a home built on questions. It was a home built on understanding. Mia grew stronger in school. She stopped hiding when people talked. Instead, she learned to walk with confidence, knowing who stood behind her. David also changed. He no longer carried doubt in his heart. He carried certainty, not from a DNA test, but from love that had survived every challenge. One evening, Mia received a school assignment. The topic was, my family. She sat for a long time thinking. Then she wrote carefully. My father is not the man I am connected to by blood. He is the man who stayed when others left. He is the man who chose me every day. that is my family. When David read it later, he did not speak for a long time. He just nodded quietly, his eyes heavy with emotion. Years later, when Mia became older, she understood something even deeper. Family is not always about where you come from. It is about who refuses to leave you behind. And David, who once questioned everything, finally understood the greatest truth of his life. Love does not need proof to be real. It only needs consistency. So when people asked their story, there was no bitterness in David's voice anymore. Only peace. Because in the end, he did not lose a daughter. He gained a bond stronger than blood, one chosen, tested, broken, and rebuilt by love. Family is not defined by blood, but by love that is shown through actions over time. A man raises a child with full sacrifice and care, only to later discover he is not biologically connected to her. At first, this truth makes him question everything and consider leaving. But the child, who already knew the truth, refuses to let go because she was raised with real love, not conditions. The key lesson is that true bonds are built through presence, sacrifice, and consistency, not DNA. When love is real, truth does not destroy it, it only proves how strong it already is. In life, what matters most is not who is biologically yours, but who chooses to stay, and who you choose to keep close even after everything is revealed. If this story adds value to you, please do well to give me a like, share, and comment on the video to share your thoughts. Most importantly, please support me by subscribing to this channel, turn on the notification button and follow for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.